I have a huge problem with it, Skip. I have a huge problem with it because this is what's wrong with college sports, and this is why I don't watch it. I don't watch it. I think it's BS because regardless of how a team performs, college used to be about the underdog story, about pageantry, about amateurism, and hey, any team at any given time can win the game or have a chance at a national title, and it doesn't matter as long as you go out there and compete. Now it's become politics. It's nothing but politics because Florida State, a Power 5 team from a Power 5 conference, a decent Power 5 conference in the ACC. I mean, Clemson has been in the playoffs a bunch of times, went undefeated. And the only knock against them is their starting quarterback got hurt. And so that's the reason you don't put him in the national champ. You don't put him in the college playoff. I don't get that because a few years ago, Cordell Jones of Ohio State started his first game, Skip, ever in the Big Ten championship. He won that game.
He was good.
They went on to play Alabama in the first round of the college football playoffs. His second start, third-string quarterback. He was a third-string quarterback that year to start the year. And they beat Bama and went on to win the national championship. And that's a beautiful story. It's a great story. It was great for college football. It's great for everybody because you see that, hey, a team that is determined enough, that is together enough, even if you got your third-string quarterback, you're inspired. It's an inspiring story. But instead, we get a fat cat, a front runner, a SEC team because, oh, the SEC's strong and the SEC's always strong. The SEC is 7-9 against non-conference opponents this year. 7-9. They're not some powerhouse conference right now. They're not some, hey, we beat everybody and we're the class above everybody else. They're not that right now. So a team shouldn't go from 8th in the nation to 4th and jump over an undefeated team with nothing else other than, oh, we're Alabama. Like, it's ugly. It doesn't make you want to watch the game. It makes you think, man, who paid somebody? Like, who's pulling the strings here? You just want Alabama in it no matter what they do, no matter if they lose games, the wins and losses don't count anymore. You just got to be Alabama. Win enough games, and if you're Alabama, you'll make it. Florida State, we're sorry, your quarterback got hurt. You went undefeated, but it doesn't matter.
You know, I don't have a problem with it, Skip. I, in fact, like the fact that these 4 teams are in it. I talked about it with Nick last week as they announced the matchups in the Final Four, and I said to them, I said, look, I said to Nick, I said, Michigan's going to win.
So Nick is
a producer.
Your
producer. Yep. And so I said, you know, because we were talking about it, and I said that Michigan's going to get in. If Alabama beats Georgia, Alabama's going to get in. Even if Florida State beats Louisville, Florida State's not getting in. Texas is going to get in, regardless, because Texas beat the #1 team in the country. I mean, beat an SEC team at that point in time in Alabama on the road. Then Alabama beats the #1 team. Washington's going to, Oregon, Washington, whichever one of those two would have won that game the other night in the Pac-12 championship was getting in. Washington got in. They won. And I understand what Richard is saying, but Florida State is not one of the top 4 teams today. Remember now, it's about remember, it's about the way that the guidelines are put together is about them being one of the top teams today. Losing Jordan Travis a couple weeks ago certainly hurt them. There's no question about it. The committee, and neither do I, want to see. You say you don't want to watch college football. You think I want to watch Florida State go up against Michigan or Alabama or even Washington, for that matter, or Texas, for that matter?
I don't want to see an Alabama team that didn't earn their way in. I don't care if they feel like they're the best team.
No, they
lost.
They earned their way in.
They didn't earn it. You earned it by not losing.
They won the SEC championship. They beat the #1 team in the country from wire to wire, who was on their way, Skip, to winning 3 national titles potentially. What do you call that? 3-peat? Is that what we would call it? A 3-peat?
Yep.
They were eyeing a 3-peat. And they took care of business against them. They won by 3, but handily they were winning that football game, kind of dominating it throughout the course of the game from the front to the back, even though the score at the end really didn't indicate the way they manhandled Georgia at times throughout that game. So when you look at it, the storylines are great, though. Michigan, Alabama, Harbaugh can't stand Saban. There was always a back and forth. You were in my backyard throwing camps. Get out of here, Alabama and Tuscaloosa. Michigan, you don't belong here. Washington and Texas, Steve Sarkisian coached at Washington. Those are just some little bitty backline storylines. Now, look, do I feel bad about Florida State and the players? They worked so hard to get undefeated. Yes, I do. I feel horrible about it. If it was 6 teams, then of course. But it's only 4. And there's only 4 that can be in it. And the committee said, hey, you got to be playing your best football. You go back to Cordell Jones when he took over, but Ohio State was playing really good football.
Because of Ezekiel Elliott was running wild.
Yes.
Nobody could stop it.
Yes, so it didn't hurt them. It didn't hurt them whether or not they put in a backup quarterback who was number 3 or a dude that they found in the band. The team was stacked and loaded. That's not the case with Florida State. They had 55.
You won't know because they didn't get a shot.
They had 55 passing yards the other night, man, against Louisville.
55.
I don't care.
Think about that.
Alabama lost. You don't get to lose, Key. If you lose, you should not be in it. Because if that's the point, then wins and losses don't matter. Then don't play the game.
And the crazy thing about it is everybody wants to focus in on Uncle Nick. Sarkisian lost too. And he lost to Oklahoma, am I right?
Right, but they beat Bama. They beat the team.
And guess what? Bama beat Georgia, the number 1 team in the country.
Georgia ain't in it no more.
Which is Georgia's not in it anymore because they beat the number 1 team. Had Florida State beat the number 1 team, they probably would be in it. But that didn't.
Florida State don't need to beat the number 1 team. They didn't lose.
They struggled against Louisville, man. Stop.
They didn't lose. They have not lost a game. So you can say whatever. You can say struggle. You can say
the committee does not value the ACC conference as a Power 5 conference the same way they do Texas, Alabama, Washington, and Michigan. They don't value it.
And they shouldn't value the SEC. They 7-9 against non-conference opponents. 7-9.
That's you're talking about. Skip, he's talking about the entire conference. We're only talking about 2 teams. We're not having a conversation about Vanderbilt and LSU.
You just talked about the ACC conference.
We're talking about because Florida State's coming out of the SEC out of the ACC as the top dog. Skip, Alabama. If Alabama played Florida State, you know what they'd do to them. Come on now, they do something to them so terrible it wouldn't even be funny.
Terrible. Okay, my turn. To Richard's first point. It was a sports tragedy that Jordan Travis went down the way he went down. Richard and I have disagreed over this hip drop tackle, but that's not the point right now. It happened. It was hard to watch. It just tears your heart out for Florida State. They lost a Heisman candidate. They lost their leader. They lost their playmaker. They lost their offense all at once. And yet, what's the goal here? To Keyshawn's point, isn't the goal to get the best 4 teams right now? I mean, right now. And we got to see the backup quarterback of Florida State go to Gainesville and play Florida, and he was okay. It's Tate Rodemaker, and he played okay, and they managed to hang on and win 24-15, but he wasn't great, and he got concussed. So the other night, they had to start a true freshman in Brock Glenn, and to Keyshawn's point, 55 passing yards. They were 2 for 16 on 3rd down. He had a QBR of 13 on a scale of 0 to 100, and the committee said, we can't do that right now because they're not the best team right now. Their defense is playoff caliber and worthy,
100%.
But not their offense, because you are risking embarrassment if you send that offense to the Wolves up above you. Because
TCU last year versus Georgia in the championship.
Yeah. And that hurt.
So what? So what? It's still earned.
Okay. All right. Now, let's go bigger picture. This is just me. Richard, you say the SEC was 7-9 against non-conference, but if you look at all the computer ratings, starting with the Sagarin ratings, that SEC West is by far the best conference in the country. And by the way, if you look at what Georgia did to the SEC this year as the runaway #1 team the whole year, I'm looking at these scores. They're playing top 20 teams 1, 2, 3, 4 times, and they are annihilating top 20 teams. And that game on Saturday was very close because Georgia actually had more yards than Alabama. To Keyshawn's point, Alabama took charge early on and won the game. So you got to give it up to Alabama. They earned their way in, to me, by beating the #1 team in the country, 27-24, by 3. But Georgia also belongs in the Final Four because I dare anybody to tell me that Texas could beat Georgia right now on a neutral field, because they can't. I know Texas. I'm a Big 12 guy. My Sooners beat them by 4 points, 34-30, on a neutral site in Dallas, Texas, in the big Red River rivalry. And yet, to your point, Richard, Texas had already, back on September 9th, gone to Tuscaloosa and won the game, and won it fairly handily, won it by 10 points. But the point there was Nick Saban was screwing up his quarterback situation, as he is wont to do, because Jalen Milroe had only started one game against Middle Tennessee. That was their first game. This was his second game, and Saban is iffy on him all the way through the game and benches him for the next game. They went to South Florida the next game, and he played Ty and Tyler, the two backup guys, and they barely eked out a 17-3 win. Then he goes back to Jalen Milroe, and right now, Jalen Milroe looks like the best quarterback in the country. I don't know. He is on fire. And you want to talk about a stud. You want to talk about arm and legs. He is the whole package. And it took a while for him to regain the job and regain his footing and take off. Well, they have taken off. So are we talking about body of work here? Because I'm not. I'm talking about right now. Because if Jalen Milroe were right now, if Texas had to go today to play at Tuscaloosa, Texas would get thrashed. Listen, Texas is an overrated product of a Big 12 title game featuring Oklahoma State. Are you kidding me? Oklahoma State lost at home to South Alabama 33-7. They lost at home, and then even recently they went to UCF, to Central Florida, and lost 45-3. It took them 2 overtimes to finally get past BYU to get into the Big 12 title. Are you kidding me? It was a joke that Oklahoma State, who, by the way, stole a game against my Sooners because Drake Stoops got tackled in the end zone at the end of the game. We lost, but we should have won the game because Drake Stoops got tackled, and we would have won if you called that penalty. The point is that Oklahoma State was so overrated in the Big 12 title game. Here, I think we got the play right here. He just gets tackled. He just gets yanked down. Okay, if you call that, Oklahoma's probably in the Big 12 title game, then you've got some standard there. You've got a measuring stick, because I think my Sooners were better than Texas. But Texas was able to play Oklahoma State, and everybody's just given Texas a straight pass into the tournament. Help me out here. Could Texas beat Georgia right now on a neutral field? Georgia was really good all season long. Help me out. There's no way that Georgia isn't better than Texas.
I don't think Texas beat any of the 3 teams that's in the Final Four. Any of the 3.
Yeah. Okay.
And if you want to throw Georgia in, Texas doesn't beat them.
But I don't.
And certainly Florida State wouldn't beat them.
No, Florida State would not.
What's the point of playing the games? What is the point? All this nonsense y'all talking about. What is the point of playing the games? If a team can go undefeated, you keep talking about the SEC. The SEC plays mostly a patty cake schedule. They played Middle Tennessee. They played Division I AA and FCS schools.
I got it. Except for each other.
When they're
they have to play each other.
Except for each other, and they're overrated. They are an overrated conference. So, yeah, playing against each other when you don't play against anybody else, it looks like, oh, my God, LSU was ranked 8. Arkansas was ranked 16, et cetera, et cetera. And then those teams go play other teams in other conferences, and they take L's. When you watch the bowl season this year, those teams will take L's. It happens every year. LSU played Florida State. Guess what? They took an L. So it's, again, you overrate this conference, and you sit there and say, oh, my God, they're so good. They beat everybody. Well, most of the time, they're playing nobody. Outside of their conference, they're not playing ranked opponents. They're not playing great opponents. When they do, they lose. Alabama played Texas. They lost. I don't care what you're saying. Oh, now they're playing Jalen Milroe, and they got it together. Well, they didn't have it together when they needed it together. And so they should not be in this. You should not punish a team who went undefeated just because their quarterback got injured.
Alabama beat LSU badly also, right? So that was like Alabama's third best win.
Again, it doesn't matter. That's not a good – it's a conference that doesn't matter. That's what I'm saying. You've got two good teams and everybody else. You got two good teams and everybody else. Y'all keep saying this stuff about SEC. I don't see them winning a lot of bowl games. Keyshawn, every year they go to these bowl games and play other ranked teams, and they lose these bowl games.
I'm not even
and then y'all go the next year.
I'm not even concentrating on the conference because every single conference, even the Pac-12 conference, we play Nevada, San Jose. I mean, we play
USC,
non-Power 5 teams. Everybody does that. Every single
conference. But they don't play FCS schools.
Michigan played UNLV.
Michigan played nobody for 5 weeks.
Like, come on. Everybody plays
but do they play FCS schools?
But here's what I would...
Then what I'm saying is stop putting Bama in when they don't deserve to be in. Y'all keep saying Georgia and Bama deserve to be in over these kids. Then go undefeated.
The last several weeks of the season, Bama has been playing like one of the top 4 teams in the country. That's why they're in it, Richard. That's why they're in it.
So the full body of work doesn't matter. It just matters how you play it at the end.
I didn't make the damn rules up.
That's what it is.
Talk to the committee about their guidelines. Not me and Skip. We just giving you the information. We didn't make it up. They said, hey, are they playing their best? They say no. He just told you. They eked out a win against a dog of a Florida team with a backup at number 2 who got concussed. They played a true freshman. They are not going to do that. They're not going to put him in. You mentioned Cordell Jones, Ezekiel Elliott, Michael Thomas and company were carrying the team at that point in time with the defense that Ohio State had, with a coach on the sideline and Urban Meyer. They were going to put them in if they won. They took care of their business and won.
And what's the point of playing?
Again, Richard, I am not on the damn committee. I'm just giving you the information. I'm just giving you the information. That's all I'm doing. At least I'm trying to give you the information. There's no point
of playing these games. Because it's not a real national championship then. It's not a real tournament. If all you got to do, hey, it doesn't matter if you played well during the regular season. It doesn't matter if you went undefeated. We think you're playing well at the end. We think this team was ranked 8th in the country a week ago is now a top 4 team because they won the SEC championship. And now the number 1 team is what, the number 6 team? I mean, what are we doing? What are we doing?
Okay, Richard, back to what you brought up about Cardale Jones. That year that Ohio State got on that roll in that run, Cardale played first against Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship game.
Big Ten championship.
And Cardale was really good in that game, and the committee could see, oh, he can really play because he can really play. There was, I'm not sure there wasn't some bump. I think it got better at quarterback with him. And all of a sudden, with Zeke running for 200 plus, you could just see them coming. So there was no controversy about letting Ohio State in with Cardale Jones because it looked like he might have improved the position. That's how well he played in the Big Ten championship game. So there was no controversy there. And yet, to Keyshawn's point, if you look at Florida State, what case could you make? Do you think Florida State, to Keyshawn's point, do you think Florida State could beat any of these teams? They couldn't right now.
I'm not sure because they won't have the opportunity. I don't know.
Not
because
right
college
now,
football,
Richard.
Crazier things have happened,
not right now.
But you don't get the opportunity to see it because you give it to a team that's a powerhouse, a perennial, that doesn't necessarily deserve it. You could say, hey, they're one of the best teams playing right now. If they were one of the best teams and they didn't lose to Texas, then they wouldn't have anything to argue against them. They'd be in, no question. But they did lose.
But that was week 2, not at the end of the season. That was week 2.
I don't care when it was. Is it the full body work? If it ain't the full body work, let's stop playing the games and just put Bama in the SEC in every year and don't even worry about playing the games. Just pick the bowl games early.
So Richard, the only person I know that didn't think Bama, if they beat Georgia, was getting in. You're the only person I know.
I mean, I'm just tired. I'm tired of them putting teams in that didn't deserve. You're gonna go from 8 to 4. I don't care who you beat.
Okay, so Richard, you wanted no SEC teams in the Final Four.
I wanted the teams that deserve it. I mean, Georgia could have potentially stayed, but you're not going to put a non-champion in there unless it's Bama. They put Bama in there as a non-champion before. So as a non-SEC champion, and they won it that year. I think they beat LSU. But I'm just saying, man, at the end of the day, if you're going to not put an undefeated Florida State in there, there's really no point of playing this game and call it a real national championship because it's not legitimate. If you're not basing on full body of work, then don't call it a national championship. It's a selected champion.
So it's easy for me to use 20/20 hindsight and say, I don't like it that they spread the wealth and said, well, let's award the Big 12 a berth just because they're the Big 12. And yet I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth because my Sooners have been awarded that kind of a berth before when they probably didn't deserve it.
And what happened to them?
They got smoked.
Exactly.
By Alabama and especially LSU.
Put teams in that is not good. We just watched TCU play Georgia. Even though they thumped Michigan, we watched them play Georgia.
Yeah.
And we went home
how does that mean they don't
in the first
deserve?
Quarter. Because
how does that
it's
not mean they don't deserve?
No one ever said that Florida State does not deserve to be in. No one ever said that TCU didn't deserve to be in.
Yeah.
However, when they are looking at this, as Skip said, they do not want to just put teams in that's getting ready to get run shop on. Mm-hmm. They're just not. That's the reality of it, Richard. Whether you want to accept it or not, they're just not going to do that.
It just kills the integrity of whatever you're trying to do.
Well, you don't have to worry about it after this year anyway because it opens up next year to 12 teams.
Okay, last thought. Richard, to your point, I think a whole lot of people out there are on your side about this, so I do appreciate your position on this, even though we both disagree. All right, now we got to get to the National Football League because the 49ers, predictably, crushed the Eagles, which means ... Here
we go. Here we go.
Here we go.
No mercy. No mercy. No mercy.
Thanks for watching, Undisputed fans. Do you want more highlights from the show? Make sure to click that subscribe button for all the exclusive content from Undisputed.